Good morning, everyone. Good morning. Okay, so over the last few weeks we've been talking about our moods, our emotions and our feelings. We've been talking about how it's sometimes a good idea to get a control over those things before those things get control over us. And I want to start today by saying that it's not a sin to be in a bad mood. You're welcome. Bad moods are a part of life. In the Bible, it says that man that is born of woman has but a few days, and they are full of trouble. And that's pretty much a promise. It's not funny. It's something that we should get our head around. You are going to have bad days. Just accept that. There's going to be times in your life where when you get up, you're just not going to feel it. And you're going to want to give up and let go. That's just life. And the sooner you accept that, the better you'll get along. And into that darkness, into that swampy head emotion thing, Jesus says something slightly annoying. In the Gospel according to St. John, Jesus is talking to his closest followers, and he says, in this world you will have trouble, but take heart, I have overcome the world. Now what's interesting is that the phrase take heart literally means cheer up. And it's written as an imperative. So what Jesus is saying, hey guys, you're going to have bad days, but cheer up. Cheer yourself up. Get a grip on your own head and your own heart and do whatever you need to do to get yourself in a better frame of mind. Now, when you're in an uncheerful mood, that is just a maddeningly unhelpful thing to hear. In fact, I think that happy people who tell sad people to cheer up are among the stupidest people you'll ever meet. Right? How dare you tell me to change how I feel when I have very little control over how I feel? That just seems unfair. And yet, nonetheless, stupidity, annoyance, difficulty aside, this is exactly what Jesus says. Cheer yourself up. Take heart. And because this is so maddeningly positive, I want us to spend our time this morning looking at this particular episode in Jesus' life. Because what interests me about this is that Jesus doesn't speak these words on a sunny day. What Jesus says in this sentence, he doesn't say when everything's going well. The gospel, remember, isn't for the light, it's for the dark. So in John 16, the context is that Jesus is getting towards the end of his career, and that being the case, he's got a few tough things to say to his followers. In verse 1 of this chapter, he says, all this I have told you, so that you will not fall away. In other words, I just need you to know that there's going to be days ahead when hope leaves you and you'll feel like giving up. There's days coming when it's going to be quite hard for you to get up off the sofa and motivate yourself to do whatever it is you want to do. For example, next verse, they will put you out of the synagogue. In fact, there's a time coming when anyone who kills you will think they're offering a service to God. So, obviously, Jesus is saying this to his followers. His followers are Jewish. And at the heart of Jewish culture is the weekly gathering at the synagogue. So what Jesus is saying here is incredibly brutal. He's saying, I need you to know that in the days ahead, the people who are closest to you are going to rip out your heart. The people from whom you rightly expect support and encouragement are going to kick you in the guts. And they're going to laugh while you cry. They're not even going to have the decency of a guilty conscience. They're going to think that the pain they cause you is good and right and proper. They're not even going to feel bad about the stuff they've done to you. That is what's in store for you, my closest friends. How's that for an uplifting speech? Let's go get him. Now, look at what he says next, though. He says, I've told you this, so that when their time comes, you will remember that I told you about them. So here's an important lesson in managing your moods. The first thing that Jesus does for his followers when there's a storm on the horizon is he lets them see the clouds. Because when they see the clouds on the horizon, they can begin to get their heads around the fact that pretty soon the wind's going to blow stronger than they'd like, and they're probably going to get wet. And that matters, because if they can see it coming, then when it comes, it won't take them by surprise, and they're less likely to have an emotional meltdown about it. Whether the oncoming storm is a good thing or a bad thing, a deserved thing or an undeserved thing, is irrelevant. The only issue of relevance is that it is a thing. It is happening. It will come. And to manage your moods, I think, you need to accept reality as it is. It's of course good to be positive. We'd like ourselves to be. It's good to look at the world with a glass half full attitude, with cheery optimism and with an open heart. That's a good and proper and right way to live. But to go the distance, you have to accept that there are occasionally going to be hard days. If you expect that everything's going to be happy all the time, if your idea of having a bad day is when your Wi-Fi stops working, or if your morning commute is longer than you'd like it to be, then how are you going to cope when you have a real problem? If you expect that life should go smoothly all the time, then sooner or later, you're going to have a hard landing. And so the wisdom in this sentence, disappointing though it is, would say to us all, hey, get your head around this. Yes, life is amazing and extraordinary, and every moment of it is to be enjoyed, but life is also hard. Life is occasionally difficult. Life occasionally throws you curveballs that are hard to deal with. And the plain fact is, you have to be tough. You have to get some calluses on your soul so that you can weather the junk that life wants to land in your lap. So here's Jesus. I just want you to know that it's going to get rough. There'll be trouble ahead. And now that you know that, it won't take you by surprise. You're ready. And by the way, it is comforting to know that you're ready, isn't it? It's comforting to know that whatever is about to happen, known or unknown, is something you can cope with. Look at what he says in verse 16. Horribly cryptic. He says, in a little while you will see me no more, and then after a little while you will see me. So Jesus, as I've said, is giving his followers a heads up that there's hard days coming their way. But notice he's pretty vague on the specifics. But what he does in this verse is he gives his followers just enough light to give them hope in a dark place. And that's important because usually all you get when life is rough is a little bit of hope. And it's important to know that a little bit of hope is enough. That's all you need. And I say that because when your moods and emotions and feelings take you to a bad place, what you inevitably do is you add up all your problems in the present and all your imagined problems in the future, and you get a picture of yourself in the direst of straits. And one of the things that frustrates you about where you are in life is that you can't seem to find a way out of your problems, and you don't seem to know the answer to your problems. And if you think that because you don't have all the answers to your problems, you're finished, that's not going to get you anywhere. In this verse, Jesus gives his followers another great slice of reality that we need to remember. A little is enough. You're not going to get all the answers all the time. Sometimes all the hope you have to hang on to is going to be nothing more than a crack of light in a very dark sky. And sometimes you're just going to have to make do with that, because that's all you've got. So here's another lesson in mood management. Relax a little when it comes to figuring out all your problems. You're not going to get all the answers when you want them. Sometimes you're just going to have to take one day at a time and grab a little bit of hope along the way, and that's all right. A weak person allows a little bit of bad emotion to ruin their day. A strong person allows a little bit of good emotion to make their day. And you want to be the latter. You want to be the kind of person who can get through the worst of times with the slenderest bit of inspiration, who can survive on almost no goodness at all. Because those are the people who make it and survive. Over the past 2 weeks I made a reference, I thought it was a perfectly rational reference, some of you felt it was strange, to putting on your socks. So I said something like, you get up in the morning, you put your socks on, and a few of you asked me about that. Clearly you thought that was rather an odd thing to say. So I'll try to explain it to you. It's a simple thing, I suppose, but I think that if you can get up in the morning and put on your own socks, your day's off to a great start. Right?
Yep.
I mean, it sounds like a country and western lyric, but any day above ground is a good day for me. Any day you can get up under your own steam and dress yourself, you don't need help, you can dress yourself, put on your own socks and your own pants, you're doing great so far. And so that's the thing I have in my head. I got up today on my own, and I put on my own socks. We'll see what happens next. I'm off to a good start. A little bit of good emotion, a little bit of positive thinking. Can't believe I just said that. Can undo a ton of bad emotion, bad vibes. And if that sounds like a load of gobbledygook to you, then you're in good company, very good company. In verse 17, hearing what Jesus said, some of his disciples said to one another, "What does he mean? In a little while you'll see me no more." They kept asking, kept going on about it. What does he mean, a little while? What's a little while mean? We don't understand what he's saying. What I learn in this sentence is that confusion is normal. When the future comes for these men, and the people they love and trust stab them in the back and laugh while they cry, the disciples are going to be taken over by thoughts that make no sense to them whatsoever. And let's just face that. One of the first consequences of being in a painful, dark situation is a confused mind. We ask all those why questions. Why is this happening? Why are those people doing those things to me? Why is my head so full of these silly thoughts? Why can't I motivate myself to get going in life? Why am I feeling this way? Why do I feel so negative about who I am and what I'm capable of? Why? And those questions seem awful and dark. And they would be, were they not prefixed with the all-important word why. To ask the question why of yourself and of your moods and emotions and feelings, I think, is to take the first step on the road to healing and betterment. It's important to remember that the thoughts in your head are just thoughts. They're not necessarily facts. And that being the case, you don't have to believe every thought that you think. And you certainly have the right to question every thought that you think. And I think this is particularly important when our moods and emotions take us to a dark place, when life takes a turn for the worst. When that happens, we often tend to have unhelpful thoughts about all manner of things. We have unhelpful thoughts about ourselves. We have unhelpful thoughts about other people. We have unhelpful thoughts about the world and unhelpful thoughts about the future. Let's have a look at a few examples. You can say things about yourself that aren't helpful. I'm boring. I'm unattractive. I'm a failure. I can't do this. You are regularly your own worst critic, thinking things about yourself that just aren't helpful. You can have unhelpful thoughts about other people. No one likes me. In your case, that may be true. Do you know what I mean? Do you remember those days, particularly when you were a teenager? No one likes me. People are out to get me. Everyone's better at it than I am. You can say things about the world that are unhelpful, and as you get older, you see these things more and more. Life is unfair. The world is cruel. The world is a horrible place. You can say things about your future that are unhelpful. Things will never get better. What's the point in continuing? I'll never get back what I've lost. I'll never get where I'd like to go. And I'm sure you can recognize more than a few of those thoughts. Now the good news is, the second you recognize a thought in your head as being unhelpful, is the second you can begin to take control of your emotions and thoughts and begin to turn those things around. So let's take a step back for a moment and look in on ourselves, always a good thing to do, and see if we can recognize some patterns of thinking that sometimes lead our head to a bad place. First of all, in no particular order, prediction. Sometimes we are experts at seeing the future. And so we have a pattern of predicting all of the things that might go wrong in the future, and our assessment of the future is always negative. So for example, I've been invited to a party at the weekend, and then I ask the what if question. What if I go there and I don't know anyone? What if I go there and no one likes me? What if I go there and no one talks to me? Or I get a new job. What if I can't do it? What if I can't cope? What if everyone finds me out as a fraud and a failure and I lose? Another pattern that we sometimes fall into is mind reading. We get ourselves into all sorts of trouble because we think we can read what's going on in other people's heads. Sometimes you make assumptions, don't you, about why a person said what they said and did what they did. And those assumptions feed your insecurity and unhappiness. You assume that they ignored you because they don't like you. Maybe they were just busy. Maybe they didn't see you. You assume that they're talking about you, that they're laughing about you all the time. You assume that they're full of negative intent towards you. Another pattern that our unhelpful thoughts take often is that we focus on the negative while totally ignoring the positive. People often ignore the positive aspects of their life. And this is one of the things that stops us feeling good about who we are and eats away at our self-confidence. So for example, despite having lots and lots of friends, we focus on the one person who doesn't like us. Instead of focusing on the many, many things in our life that are working and working well, we focus on the 3 or 4 things in our life that aren't working and that need improvement. Despite having made lots and lots of good decisions over the course of our career, we focus on the one thing that we got wrong. Then there's the deadly habit of perfectionism. Some people, I think, have no tolerance for grey. Everything in their life is black or white, right or wrong, which leads them to set very high standards for themselves. And when those standards aren't met, which they inevitably aren't, they immediately become their own worst critic. Everything I did was a waste of time. I failed. I'm no good. I should be coping better. I should be doing better. I should have this handled by now. And then perhaps worst of all is our habit of overgeneralizing our mistakes. People who do this land on themselves hard all the time because they think that one isolated failure then becomes a pattern destined to be repeated in the future. So, for example, a person might say, I failed my exam, therefore I'm going to fail at everything in life. They'll say, I failed at these 2 or 3 relationships, therefore I'm going to be lonely till my old age. They take one thing and they generalize it and make it true for all the future. Now, you can see those patterns of thinking. You can recognize some of them in your own head, I'm sure, and you can see how they lead you to some very unhelpful places in your head. And here's the good thing, though. If you can agree that your thoughts and emotions and feelings are unhelpful, if you can recognize that, then you can begin to do something about it. If you're smart enough to recognize a thought in your head as being unhelpful, then you're smart enough to think your way out of it. Let me say that again. If you're smart enough to recognize a thought in your head as being unhelpful, then you're smart enough to think your way out of it. Let's have a look at a brief and somewhat obvious checklist that I sometimes use to fight my way out of negative thoughts. First of all, is there any evidence to contradict this thought? So say, for example, I failed in the past. I got something wrong, and then I'm thinking, this means I'm going to fail in the future forever. Well, is there any evidence that contradicts that thought? Oh yeah, there probably is. I probably haven't failed at everything in life. There's probably some things I'm probably quite good at. And there's just as good odds of making in the future as there is of failing in the past. In fact, failing in the past made me better and stronger, so I'm likely to succeed in the future. Is there any evidence to contradict your silly thought? Second of all, what would a friend say to you in a similar situation? I say that because sometimes we're far more generous and understanding with other people than we are with ourselves. Too often we're our own worst critic and our own worst enemy. We keep ourselves back by saying unhelpful things to ourselves. So think, what would a friend say to you what would you say to a friend if he was in a similar situation? Thirdly, what are the costs and benefits of thinking this way? If I think because I failed in the past, I'm always going to fail in the future, is there a benefit to that thinking? Is that going to get me anywhere? Probably not. Is there a cost? Yeah, it's not a good one. And finally, and I do this all the time, how will I feel about this in 6 months' time? That one question gets me through all sorts of bad situations. Going to a bad meeting, having an uncomfortable conversation, going into a bad thought, a bad place. In 6 months' time, I won't even remember this. It'll be gone. It'll be over. I can suck it up. I can deal with it. I can get through it for the next hour. I can keep going, because in the future this won't matter. Hopefully that last one will help you get through work tomorrow. So the question that raises is, can you lead your emotions where you want your emotions to go? Or are you always destined to be at the mercy of every thought that runs through your head? Look at this. It comes from the book of Proverbs. A happy heart makes the face cheerful, but heartache crushes the spirit. I think that the simple act of choosing to fight against your unhelpful moods is often enough to begin to take control over them so that they don't take control over you. The simple act of standing up to yourself is sometimes all it takes. Okay, back to Jesus. At the end of this talk in John 16, Jesus demonstrates that he's under no illusions about the sorts of people he's talking to. In verse 32 he says, "A time is coming, in fact has already come, when you will be scattered, each to your own home. You will leave me all alone." Now don't miss the impact of this. A time is coming when you'll leave me. A time is coming when you'll stab me in the back. A time is coming when you, my followers, will bring pain and hurt into my life. That's what Jesus is saying. And he's saying it because he wants his followers to know ahead of time that his love for them is greater than their weakness and their failure. And his acceptance of them is stronger than their occasional rejections of him. He's saying, I love you and I accept you even though I know what you're about to do. In the dark days ahead, you're going to make mistakes. You're going to become a person you really don't want to be. And even then, at your lowest point, I won't feel any differently about you. I love you today, I love you tomorrow. I accept you, knowing you at your very worst. That's why he ends the way he does in verse 33. He says, I've told you these things so that you may have peace. In this world you will have trouble. Get your head around it. But take heart. Cheer up. I've overcome the world. I'm bigger than that. How awesome is that sentence? I just want you to know that it's going to get rough. I wish that wasn't the case, but wishful thinking won't get you anywhere in life. So it's going to get hard. Accept it. Deal with it. People are going to do things to you that will fill your head with all sorts of unhelpful thoughts. You're going to get confused. You're going to be racked with all sorts of what if and why questions. And I'm not going to lie to you. Those questions will ruin you. They will run amok if you let them. In fact, it's going to get so bad in the days ahead that you're going to feel like giving up altogether. Putting on your socks will sometimes feel too much for you. And that's fine. That's life. It happens. But just before it happens, I need you to know that I won't give up on you. So cheer up. Take heart. You can do this. You've got it. You can handle it. No one else can handle it for you. Like we said in week 1 of the series, it's your heart. You have to guard it. You have to take care of it. It's your head. It's you that's thinking those thoughts. This is your meltdown. These are your moods. These are your fears. So you're the one who's going to have to take your heart where you want your heart to go. But you can do it. And if that seems more than you can manage, as sometimes it does in fairness, think about it like this. Those of you who have children would never ever tell your children to do something that you know full well they could never do. You would never offer advice to your child knowing full well that your advice was beyond their grasp and capability. Such a thing would be cruel. In the same way, Jesus is under no illusions whatsoever about you. Past, present, and future, we believe, are all known to him. And knowing what he knows, he chooses not only to love you and accept you, but also to believe in you. To say to you, you're going to have a problem, but I have faith you can handle it. And get your way out of it. Trouble is coming, but that's okay. Take heart. Cheer up. Because Jesus has overcome the world. Let's pray and then let's wrap this series up next week.